Okay, my next book, because yes, I am banging these out, is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is a children's book, not even a YA. It was still really good. It I'm putting this under the category of high fantasy because it involves magicians and demons and spells and all this stuff in a different sort of world. It's an alternate world that actually our world is there in the background, but it's not interacting with this world generally. Um, so, what would I say about this book? First of all, it was recommended to me as a really good yarn, as a good story, and it was, and it like moved right along. And again, it was a straight up children's book, and you will see, in my opinion, the difference between I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, the difference between a children's book and an adult book or YA or anything like that is basically the amount of sex that's in there. Um, there was There's a character who was a Lothario. Um, and that was like the magic that he had and used. Um, Howl, the one who had the castle, who had a girl in every port, and his castle had multiple entrances to different streets and cities in this uh, fantasy land where it was taking place. And but that's where it was. It was like it kept saying, "You're going to make this girl fall in love with you," and that's as far as it went. So it was kind of cute. It was very cute. It also had a really good set of pacing. Apparently, this author has written quite a few. I've not read any of her other books, but quite a few very well received books. And I think the pacing is key because, usually when you get a book like that, Stephen King is the exception. Apparently, he supposedly just sits and starts writing, and then who knows where it ends up. And I think that's kind of BS, but I think that he has a really general outline. He doesn't actually not know anything about where it's going to end up, but whatever. These type of books are usually plotted extremely well ahead of time, because you're not dealing with a reality. You can't just suddenly start, okay, well, they go into, say, a 7-Eleven, and then you can picture it in your head and describe it really easily and what's going to take place in that 7-Eleven. It's pretty easy to say, okay, well, here's where the cashier stands, and this is where you can go get the fountain drinks, and back there is the, where you buy the beer, and here's where you can get some chips. It's every 7-Eleven is basically the same. Some of them are fancier and less. Some of them are bigger and smaller. I went to 7-Eleven in Ireland, and it was just exactly, I mean, they sold slightly different things. I think that's where I got the Shamrock chips. Anyway, no, it wasn't. It was a bus stop. It was a truck stop, like, gas station stop. It wasn't the 7-Eleven where I got the Shamrock chips. 7-Eleven had the shrimp chips, which I did not try. Anyway, off subject. It's really easy to write about things that in your life. That's why they say write about what you know, because you don't have to take the time to construct all these things, and you can learn how to describe things in a natural way as opposed to really stilted, sort of very oddly specific, unnatural. Because this is new to you too, so you describe what you can see as you're standing there, and suddenly this will occur to you and that will occur to you, and it doesn't have any flow or anything. That's pretty awful. unless you've really worked it out, like you know exactly where everything is and how it's. I mean, the one who admits that they had everything worked out ahead of time was J.K. Rowling with the Harry Potter. Supposedly knew everything that was going to happen in all 7 books basically before she started writing, which is impressive, and I believe it to a degree. I mean, as far as sort of knowing what was going to happen and plotting it out, I would agree, because there were so many, like there were things that were happening in like book 5 where you were suddenly like, oh wait, I think she said something about that in 2, and sure enough you could go back to the book like 1,500 pages before in the series and find a reference to something that came up much later. It's fantastic. But I mean, that sort of plotting thing is fantastic. But the thing, like, actually is one of the problems that she had, was you could kind of tell where things were going to end up and go. This book, the Moving Castle book, things didn't turn out as you would suspect. They were dropped in there. It was like, you know, carved and sculpted, this story. But it didn't give much. I mean, you sort of knew, obviously. You know, if this main character's thing is, you know, he uses his magic to make, you know, girls, quote unquote, fall in love with him. Well, guess what's going to happen at the end of the book? Right? It's not quite exactly what you would suspect. But I mean, as far as that goes, it was there. As far as lots of other things that happen in this book, it didn't set up direct red herrings, but it didn't give too much away. It was really well plotted. So that's why I would read this book, is to, you know, read it once and then read it again and really note when and how were things dropped into this storyline. It's actually one of the things that they suggest you do when you're trying to write screenplays, is to take a movie and actually take it like at least minute by minute, at least scene by scene. Take it apart and see how things are dropped in the movie, what the pacing is, because in movies, pacing is really important. But this book, it's not really pacing per se. It's more like how to handle giving information about an alternate world, which is useful, because if you can do that in a world that's like completely made up, then you can also do that if you're trying to write, say, a thriller that takes place now, where you're trying to not completely ignore you know, whatever's going to end up happening, because then you're like, oh well, you know, this story was about something completely different, and at the very end it took this left-hand turn and suddenly this other thing happened. You don't want that to happen, but you don't want to emphasize what's going to happen, because you do want, I know it's loud out, you do want it to, sorry, the cat is getting a little upset. Anyway, you want it to not come out of left field, but you don't want it to be something that you can figure out. You don't want to drop in like, this is a red herring, this sort of thing. So yeah. Oh, I'm doing the hair thing. It's time to get off. It's time to get off the camera. Anyway, that's why I would recommend this book. And I don't know if you would count it really as high fantasy, because high fantasy is like, I mean, there's no dragons in it. I'm going to tick some people off for saying that too. There is higher fantasy for sure, but that's what, I mean, I've got a list, and what is this? Halfway through May? And I'm not halfway done with 52 books. I just need to get going on them and keep reading, and hopefully I'll be able to actually make my 52 books and make 52 videos, and you can hate them if you want. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that one. And I'm sure I'll have another video out soon. Bye.